Good afternoon, everyone. It's so great to see you. Um, this is our second of three office hours focused on sustainability. So we are hoping to dive into more of the components that are part of our sustainability planning self-assessment. Um, the resources have been in the chat. We'll probably drop them in another couple times as folks join us to make sure everyone has access to them. They are also in your email. So feel free to look either way. And I'll pass it over to Kemi to get us started.
I'll actually get us started. No worries. So welcome everyone. We're really excited to have you here together today for our second sort of deep dive into the second three components of the sustainability framework components that will help inform the self-assessment that you all will be working on. In the chat, and I will put these again, you should have received a couple of resources, the sustainability self-assessment, sustainability self-assessment one pager that sort of just is a highlight of the three components we'll be talking about today, a note-taking form that you can capture your thoughts and ideas, and then the PDF of these PowerPoint slides that you can follow along with as well. So today we'll go through the three sustainability and framework components, and then we'll be engaging in a large group discussion about like what's come up for you, what are you thinking, where would you like to go, how do you feel like your council is sitting, currently in these components, and have opportunities to ask questions and brainstorm with one another. And that'll sort of conclude our time together. And then I did talk about these resources. I will put them in the chat again in just a moment so that we make sure if you joined a little bit later, you'll have access to them. So that is all for me. And now I will turn it over to Kemi.
Okay, thanks, Lindsay. Hello, everyone. So when it comes to sustainability, and what it is and why it's important, I think we all kind of have a good idea at this point. Session, so I won't take too much time to go into this, but we do know that when it comes to sustainability, activities can evolve over time and change as needed. So as Lindsay mentioned, we're going to be going over three of the sustainability framework components today. When it comes to the ways that you can use this self-assessment tool. So this is just three of the components from the entire framework, but there are different ways you can use this tool. Again, here it is, a list of it for your reference and to review at your convenience. And again, like we did in our prior session, we'll be talking through some of the levels for the components today. And just as a reminder, the rubric is not intended to be definitive, and your council may not fit perfectly into a description, but there might be a level that fits better over another. All right, so today we'll be going over relevance and practicality, evaluation and return on investment, and communication. So starting with the relevance and the practicality. So the first aspect of this is that the approach is based on a clear assessment and understanding of the need. So when it comes to pre-awareness stage, the HEC might not be aware of some of the information or data that's required to demonstrate the need for a particular strategy or approach. So for example, the HEC may not have conducted any surveys or assessments to understand the disparities and needs in the area. So decisions are made based off of assumptions rather than actual data. During the awareness stage, the HEC begins to recognize the importance of understanding the community needs and start collecting, basic data, state, regional, local data. At the interaction stage, the HEC might use past assessments and regional and state data to demonstrate the need of their strategy. And then mastery is when the HEC uses current data, current assessments, current regional or state data to shape the implementation of their strategy. So for example, the HEC regularly updates its assessments and incorporates feedback from community partners, community members, and continuously refines the programs to address current and emerging needs. So the second aspect is that the approach is tailored to the cultural, political, and economic environment. So at the pre-awareness stage, the approach does not take into account some of the contextual factors that may inhibit or facilitate successful implementation, things like geography, policies, or local culture. So for example, the HEC might roll out a campaign without considering the diverse cultural backgrounds, the political climate, or the economic conditions of the community. So this might lead to low engagement and participation. In the awareness stage, the HEC starts to recognize some of these contextual factors that may affect the implementation of their strategy, but haven't really taken action to address these factors. And then during the interaction stage, the HEC has identified some contextual factors and is actually taking action to address them. And mastery is when the HEC exhibits like a deeper understanding of the context with which they operate and has designed an approach to take into account some of the contextual factors. So for example, the HEC's initiatives is fully integrated into local, cultural, political, and economic fabric. They work with community members to create cultural resonant messages, engaging or have awareness of policies in place and have developed programs that provide economic benefits. So the third aspect of relevance and practicality is ensuring that the approach is likely to accomplish the desired impact by considering the magnitude or complexity of the problem. So at the pre-awareness stage, the approach might not be relevant or practical given the complexity of the problem. So for example, the HEC might launch a simple exercise program to combat obesity without considering root causes and issues such as food deserts, lack of safe space to exercise, or social economic barriers. In the awareness stage, the approach serves short-term needs without attempting to address multiple aspects of or root causes of the issue. And then at the interaction stage, the HEC implements multifaceted programs that address various aspects of the problem. The mastery is where the HEC designs a comprehensive and adaptive approach that tackles root causes and continuously refine their strategies for long-term impact. So an example of that is the HEC addresses all aspects of the problem by continuously evaluating and refining their strategies to ensure that long-term sustainability, and significant impact. Okay, so that was relevance and practicality. So moving on to evaluation and return on investment. So the first aspect of this component is the evaluation focuses on generating data needed to monitor and manage implementation, measure impact, and demonstrate benefits to the community. So at the pre-awareness stage, there might not be a formal evaluation process. So the HEC may not collect any data on how their programs are being implemented or the outcomes. In the awareness stage, initial efforts are made to discuss and identify data collection methods. And then during the interaction stage, the HEC actively collects and analyzes data to track implementation and make necessary adjustments. Mastery is where the HEC has a comprehensive evaluation framework, regularly collects and analyzes the data, and demonstrates significant improvements and impact. So for example, the HEC may collect and analyze data on program implementations, on outcomes, on community impacts, and have quarterly reports or reports that just highlight the significant improvements in metrics, which is shared with partners to inform and refine their strategies. So this next aspect ensures that the HEC can demonstrate social, economic, and health benefits to the community. In the pre-awareness stage, the HEC might not have data to show the impacts of their program. So for instance, the HEC runs various programs but has no data to show how these programs affect the community. Like there's no success stories or metrics to show the impact. During the awareness stage, initial efforts are made to identify and track metrics. At the interaction stage, the HEC actively evaluates and presents data showing the positive impact in the community, but mastery is sharing a comprehensive impact reports that can be used to secure funding and support by highlighting success stories and significant improvements. All right, so finally we have communication. And the first aspect of communication is that the HEC translates successes and creates awareness through effective communication. So in the pre-awareness stage, there might not be a plan for communicating project outcomes. So for example, the HEC might complete a successful fair, but no one has documented the outcomes or shared the success with partners, and the HEC doesn't see the need to communicate this achievement. During the awareness stage, ad hoc methods like newspapers and press releases is used to update the community and partners. At the interaction stage, the HEC regularly uses media and other methods to highlight activities and effectiveness. And mastery is when the HEC has a targeted communication strategy and uses various channels to build awareness and social support and public support. The second aspect is ensuring that information is exchanged among partners through structured and informal channels. So in the pre-awareness stage, communication might be limited to one-on-one interactions. So for example, different partners of the HEC might be working on similar initiatives, but are not aware of each other's efforts. So there's no regular meetings or communication channels established. During the awareness stage, communication might occur, but only during infrequent meetings. And at the interaction stage, partners communicate amongst themselves during regular scheduled meetings. But mastery is where there's robust system for information exchange, including online platforms, fostering a comprehensive communication among partners. So for example, the HEC has a robust system for their information exchange and includes collaborative online platform where partners can share documents, updates, share best practices. Informal communication is encouraged through networking or social media engagement, ensuring everyone is well informed and connected. All right, so that was the final aspect for communication. So, and I feel like I went through that pretty quickly, but all the information is there on the PowerPoint, so feel free to go through it at your convenience. But now I'd like to open it up for any questions or thoughts on what stood out to you from these components. Are there any general questions that folks have?
Pretty straightforward.
Thanks, Jason. Any other thoughts or feedback?
Feel like the communications piece was really helpful and insightful. I think that's something with ours we kind of struggle with because it can be a lot of information about existing programming. Or like just kind of, it just feels like there's always kind of a lot going on. So to be able to effectively document everything in order to be able to kind of share and communicate that out, I feel like that takes, you know, a lot of organization and kind of being very intentional about it. So I appreciate that that was kind of one of the guidelines of what that looks like to do it successfully. And yeah, that I feel like that piece stood out to me.
Thank you, Olivia.
There was a thought that I had around one of the earlier slides. I was trying to locate it, but it was talking about whether we are utilizing current data or assumptive data, if you will. And so, pardon? So my thought in that with regards to like, I would have to see it, but my thought went immediately. If we can go back to yep. Thank you.
I think it was under evaluation.
One prior, yep.
Okay. Yeah.
There's no evaluation plan for the project. Example, the health has no formal evaluation process. It's healthcare. They have not collected any data on how their programs are being implemented or their outcomes. Nope, don't even worry about it. It makes sense now. I was putting it in another thought, so it makes sense in the context of what you did. I'm great, thank you.
Okay. Any other thoughts or anything that stood out to folks?
So Kimmy, I will share the thought, so I won't just leave people hanging though. Tell people. So my thought was like, so we get like, when we're doing this work, right, we get data that is in real time, right? Like that we can't account for, you know? And so like, we never thought that this data existed until we got involved in it. And now this data becomes data, and now we got to figure out how this data get measured. So my thought in that was that like, when we're out doing the work, is there assumption to the data because we're finding data in real time? You know what I mean? Like, this really works like this. These people really see this in this way. This is sort of like their language. You know, we go in with this thought, but what we realize is that the community received it differently than what it is that we thought. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, thank you for that feedback. Absolutely, I think, you know, the data that we share out to the community sometimes, which is why, you know, it's good to have community involvement as well in the process of evaluation often. Yeah, like that totally resonates, that, you know, folks interpret the data differently and might, you know, see it different than how we shared it out. So thank you for that. Any other feedback or anything that stood out? Questions? So I'll turn it over to Monique and Lindsay now to launch the poll.
Thank you, Kimmy. All right. So I know last session we did the breakout rooms where we were able to talk amongst each other based off your chosen component. But this time we figured we would switch it up and have a larger group discussion for the remainder of the session. So instead of the breakout rooms, we are going to go and use Zoom polls where we will be asking you about how you're feeling about each component. Basically, how do you feel your council excels in which components, and how do you feel, or which components you feel your council may need more support in. So Lindsay will go ahead and kick us off with our two Zoom polls, and then feel free to take a few minutes to go through and answer both those questions. Again, which do you feel your council excels in the most, and which component you feel you may need more support in? And you should be able to individually access those polls. Please let us know if you don't see the poll or if you're having any technical issues. We are seeing responses coming in. Thank you. We'll give about 30 more seconds for you to go ahead and answer those two polls before we jump into our next part of the discussion. All right. So we'll go ahead and close the polls and jump into our discussion. As I'm seeing the results come in, I do notice, and again, thank you for sharing. I do notice that two of the components are kind of neck and neck when it comes to your feelings of needing more support in. So I see that evaluation and ROI, and as well as communication, was kind of voted on needing some more support. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So if anyone wanted to share why they selected this component, as why they need more support in it, and even go further into speaking on what support you might need. Then we do encourage to hear from different councils, but just want to see what was the reason that you chose either communication or evaluation and ROI as a component that you may need support in. You can feel free to come off the mute button, or you can utilize the chat as well.
Oh, I know
I'll
this group
start.
can be louder. Yes, thank
Yeah.
you. There we go.
Yeah, I think I don't know about everybody else, but I was pulling up the slides and kind of like going through it and thinking about a response. So I know I chose evaluation and ROI because I feel like we do a decent job of like evaluating like mini grants and things of that nature, but we don't really have like a collective plan when it comes to evaluation. And so, just looking at what could we track or monitor perhaps the entire time, we've never really done any thinking or development in that space. So I definitely think that's something that we could utilize. Like we have, done surveys, for example, just around like demographics to see, if we're kind of hitting all of our diversity needs in our community, but we're not really looking at the larger impact. So I definitely think that's something we can improve upon.
Thank you, Nicole. Anyone else want to share why they chose either communication or evaluation and ROI as a component they may need more support in? And if so, what kind of support do you think might be helpful for your council? I'm not hearing anything. So while you're thinking about that, we'll go ahead and
So
jump into
this,
a. Oh, go ahead. I'm so
oops,
sorry.
sorry, sorry, I'm
Mhm.
in my car and I'm keep pushing things that make me do things I don't want to do. Um,
No worries.
but I finally found the mute button so I could unmute. So I just kind of want to like echo and add to what the previous person just said. I
Hmm.
think it's really challenging to know how to measure the effectiveness of your group, of your council,
Hmm.
kind of in more as a whole and in general terms versus programmatic, right? It's easier to do programmatic evaluation and see if our programs um, are working or if we're hitting the right people with our programs. But how do we know that as a whole, our council is making a difference in our community? What does
Hmm.
that program measurement look like, or that measurement or evaluation, performance measure, whatever it is? What does that look like, and how do we know that our specific council is making a difference in our community and what we're trying to do? So I think that for me is definitely something that we can use some TA on.
Hmm.
For sure. And then, making sure that the community, how do we let the community know that what we're doing makes a difference, and letting the community know and other organizations exactly what we're doing and how we can be of service and work together with other organizations.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And I don't know if Danielle or Lindsay want to jump in, but I know from experience, we definitely always want to hear from the community when it comes to evaluation that serves them. So uplifting that community voice, whether that's through different data collection methods, surveys, focus groups, interviews, what have you. So definitely uplifting that community voice and getting that raw data will definitely help, give you data and show you what's working and what's not working. I know it's definitely easier said than done, but really assessing the community and bringing them into that conversation, I think it's a good first start.
That's
So
excellent.
we, oh,
Oh, sorry.
go ahead. No, go
No,
ahead.
I was just saying that that's an excellent point, and I think sometimes that direct tie can be difficult, but um, really thinking about how things have evolved over time. So some of this you may not see a really fast change in, um, until maybe a year or two, like maybe 2 years down the road, as you build those relationships. A lot of the work that you've done so far has been that relationship building piece. So there may be, the opportunity to see how some of the mindsets have changed, how some of the programs in terms of how they promote them or share them have evolved, or even how um, they kind of set up their models in terms of whether it's evidence based, or working towards developing a more community developed and community centered programming model. That's just what I wanted to add.
Thank you. So next slide, please. And if there's any other thoughts on that, feel free to jump in as we also kind of go through a few discussion questions based on the three different components again: relevance and practicality, evaluation and ROI, and communication. So we want to ask a few councils. We definitely want to hear some voices in the room, the virtual room. Where do you feel your council is sitting currently? So thinking about that, those different levels of awareness. So pre-awareness, awareness, interaction, mastery. Where do you feel your council is currently sitting with any of the components you can lift up, and is there somewhere you would like to be? So moving from one level to the next. So feel free to jump in and kind of share where you feel your council is sitting in respect to those three components, or one of the three, whichever you choose.
I can provide some feedback. Can you guys hear me? I've been having some problem with my speaker.
Yep, I can hear you, Shoni.
Yeah, so the Muskegon group took a hard look at sustainability
Oh, it's cutting out a little bit now on my end. I don't know if anyone else is getting the feedback.
Can you guys hear me a little bit better?
Yep, that's a little better.
Okay, so the council, we had a meeting with the council to determine our sustainability plan. So
Mm-hmm.
I took the information from the presentation given to give them some thought process about how they would like to spend their time for 2025. So right now, the top priority for Muskegon is getting a thorough sustainability plan. It's going to be serving the BBO and the council and just navigating the impacts to the community and having them think about that. So I think once we can get that done, it really will like knock home that data that they need to come together as a collection of data because we do have heavy hitters on our council. We have executive directors and we have CEOs and leaders of the community. So they have the tools that they need. They just need to collect some thinking, and we're starting to get into a mind frame now that I think the sustainability plan is going to help open that up fully.
Perfect. Thank you. I got most of that, but it sounds like that you mentioned that there is some heavy hitters on there that they can definitely be able to pull in that data. They just need to kind of get started with that sustainability planning and that using that tool assessment. Does that sounds like it
Absolutely.
would? Perfect. Thank you. I did see something come up in the chat. I can go ahead and read it off from Susan. Sorry, your mic isn't working, but thank you for sharing. So you mentioned building on your last comments, any tools to measure changes in the council collaboration relationship will be helpful to see and potentially use. Well, thank you, Susan, for lifting that up. Anyone else want to share where they feel their council is currently sitting or what they would like to move to when it comes to these different components that we've covered?
I would say just because I am looking at the evaluation and ROI, we're solidly in the awareness stage, but I think I would like us to move in sort of interaction phase of
Mhm.
some sort. And I will say if I do go missing, it's because we found out one of our staff persons just had their baby today. So we're in a flutter over here because we have a new baby in our office. So we're excited. So
That
it's a
is
boy,
exciting.
7 pounds. He's doing great. So
Congratulations. That's exciting for them. Thank you
mhm.
for sharing that. So we'll move on to our second discussion question. And again, feel free to still use the chat if you don't want to come off mic, off mute. Well, how could the council reach that next level? So thinking about where you currently are when it comes to these components. So whichever level your council is currently sitting at, what do you think would help move towards that next level or reach that next level when it comes to communication, evaluation, and ROI, or relevance and practicality? So what would it take? So what kind of support would be needed to move to that next level? And while we're thinking, I do see a comment come through from Macomb. Currently strong collaboration with the community. Next level leadership for the next steps and challenges they're having is funding. Thank you for sharing that, Felicia.
So I guess I'll share. I think and this is solely my perspective, and it may not be shared with any of the other members of our council, but I think our council is made up of a lot of doers, and I'm a planner, and I don't think there has been enough planning. And so to me, it feels like if we could do a little bit more planning before we start doing, then we would be better able to see exactly all of the great things that we have been doing and all of the great changes we have been making. Whereas right now, I don't think that we can do that very well. And so, we did have a TA session with MPHI where Danielle and Lindsay came and helped us with some work planning, and that was fantastic. And they're gonna do it again.
Mhm.
But I almost think we need to even take it a little bit deeper than that with the council, so that there are some structured like performance measures. So how are we going to measure this in our work plan. So that's just solely my perspective, but I am a planner, and sometimes us planners hang out by ourselves.
So thank you for sharing. I did see another message come through the chat from Susan. I am also stuck in these measurements about the focus on primary data collection and everything being done or led by the council as the examples move towards mastery. Much of our work is collaborative and fills gaps and needs in coordination with others versus being done all directly. Since this isn't a research grant, we don't necessarily have as many opportunities to collect data versus deliver services or listen less formally. So that is a good point, Susan. I don't know if Danielle, Lindsay want to jump in to kind of speak more to that for Susan, but definitely we hear you and understand some of those concerns when it comes to that primary data collection.
Yeah, I was typing something in the chat and then figured it's just easier to come off mute. Um, I think this is an excellent point and, you know, kind of critique of how we set up the example.
Mhm.
And I think it's something that we've kind of talked with everyone about, even initially as we set up the project, of there doesn't have to be like a set evaluation plan. I think when it comes to this evaluation and ROI, it's very much so what um, kind of shows that journey and that impact. So part of why we do a lot of kind of conversational things with you all is so that we can learn and we realize like data is not just numbers and metrics, but it is also the story and the journey. Part of why we wanted everyone to do success stories is because we wanted something that really showcased the impact, whether that was of your council specifically or of the mini grant that you could share and showcase. And I think evaluation sometimes it gets a bad rap because it is often focused on how many people did you serve, how many people did you see, um, did you use your program effectively with like fidelity, etc. But when it comes to collaborative work and partnership, maybe that is where the evaluation pieces may focus is how have you been able to grow in terms of your partner network? How have you been able to integrate your partners into your main work as a backbone? So with health departments, we've talked a lot about your child chip cycle and how you may or may not be able to integrate some of the partners from your council or from the work of your council into that child chip cycle. How can we make sure that those voices continue to be represented and how programs evolve and change over time that the health department is putting on, or if you're not a health department, looking more closely at how sorry, how you've been able to maybe generate new programs, access different funding opportunities. I know some folks have kind of dived into topic areas that they didn't work in the past through the last 2 years with us. So I hope that helps. And it's definitely something that we'll keep in mind as we do more office hours.
Thank you, Danielle. So thinking about question 3, and I know we've already talked about a few challenges or some barriers, especially when it comes to evaluation that you all lifted up. What other challenges might the council need to navigate when it comes to any of these components? What are some of those challenges or additional challenges that we may not have spoke about already?
I feel like for our council, it's kind of the funding piece of sustainability. I feel like we're getting to, like when I was looking over kind of all of the different, like how we would evaluate our sustainability, I feel like we are at kind of the interaction phase of a lot of these different categories. And I feel like to kind of further elevate us into that next space, it's kind of funding, but also more collaboration and interaction with systems. I feel like we have a lot of the information, we have a lot of the ideas and data, but it's kind of now getting into the phase of kind of getting some of the like more decision makers in some of the systems to engage in the work and commit to some of the work plans, I would say.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else want to cover any kind of challenges that they're thinking about when it comes to these components that we've kind of went through? And to kind of speak more on that, we will be in our final session speaking about the component on funding diversification. So that might help kind of, address some of those concerns that you're having with moving from that interaction level to that mastery level. So that will be coming in our August session, but that's good that you've lifting that up right now. So thank you for that. Any other challenges that anyone wants to speak up on before we go through our last discussion question?
There's one in the chat, Monique.
Thank you. Thank you. So I see another from Shoni. Oh, a couple. Oh, that's one. Okay. So deciding if we want to formalize and become a 501c3 so we can pull down our own funding source. The council does not feel ready. So exploring becoming a coalition or something similar. Okay. And that's just the current challenge that you're going through, Shoni. Do you have any specific questions for us, or were you just lifting up that's like maybe a challenge that may have came up as you're thinking through these components? That is exciting, as Lindsay mentioned. Perfect. Awesome. Well, I'm excited for you guys to explore that option. That'd be amazing. So to wrap up the discussion section, what questions do we still have as we are thinking through these three components? We talked about where we currently feel we're sitting, how we can kind of get to that next level, any challenges that we're trying to navigate as we are working through these components or thinking about them when it comes to sustainability. So what other questions do we have at the moment?
I have one question that building on the question others, I think it was Tracy that mentioned, like, how are you measuring success in your communities from your council? And I would love to open that up to others in the room to share, like, how, since we're here and this, it's important to build off of each other's work and share this as peer learning. What have others done that, it's like, how are you measuring the success of your council?
Great question, Lindsay. So definitely want to hear from the room. If you want to lift up how you're measuring success from your council, just kind of sharing some ideas of what's been working for you. Definitely feel free to jump in and share.
I think on behalf of Macomb, we're continuing to try to figure that out, but our measures for success have been partnership creation and engagement of other community organizations in the discussions. But we're really like in infancy, I would say. I feel like in measuring our larger, greater community impact. We have been, much like others have said, measuring, programmatic types of things and not doing some of that deeper dive evaluation. We did a community needs assessment that we got great feedback on, and which led us to creating more partnerships that to interface with the council at large. But I think we are struggling too with, like, what is that next step? How do you get to that next level? So that the community at large knows who you are. In our meeting yesterday, we were talking about communication and even just trying to penetrate the community, not just each other and our web of agencies we're already collaborating with. I would be really interested in hearing how others have tackled that, because we're really young in that.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else want to uplift what has maybe been working or some challenges that you might be having when it comes to um, pretty much evaluating what you're currently doing, those activities, even, getting that community reach and kind of addressing that communication component?
Hey, this is Dana with Ingham County in Lansing, Michigan.
Hey, Dana.
Hey, so we currently have a social media going on our Health Equity Council grantees. And so that's at Ingham County Health Department's Facebook page. And so that's been exciting. The deputy health officer that I report to, we don't have a health communication specialist, so she contracted out the work with a Redhead Design in the community. And so they've gathered information and they're doing that. And then we also have a project, it's like a photo voice project where we brought our current and former grantees in. And our hope is to push out these YouTubes about them talking about their work and also talking about social determinants of health. I have a web page, and then CAHA, Capital Area Health Alliance, has one. And then I think the final thing I wanted to share is we also have our Health Equity Council members that really diversely represent various groups and organizations. And so I think it's been meaningful when we do our share outs, because then you can learn like what's going on with an AAPI group, or you're learning about something that's taking place with the Hispanic Health Alliance. I might have mixed those words up, but and we value just creating that web and how to let community members know about the organizations and the work. And finally, as a health department person, we've had discussions with other HECs too about the CHIP and the CHA process and how to involve our health equity councils, because it feels right to have some input from a body like them.
Awesome. Thank you. You're getting a lot of feedback in the chat, Dana, from individuals just mentioning how helpful that is, loving the photo voice idea, which I also love. I had a pleasure of listening through it and seeing it during our check-in, which is it was amazing idea, an amazing thing to share. Also, I have Macomb. Oh, Macomb has done an impact report and it was successful. Yeah, so thank you. What you shared sounds like a lot has resonated with a lot of the council members. So thank you, or a lot of the HEC. So thank you for that. Um, so if you have any other questions or any last minute thoughts or feedback, I can pass it back to Danielle to wrap us up and provide next steps for our last 10 minutes with each other. But definitely feel free to keep sharing. If you have any questions, once we wrap the session, you definitely know how to contact Danielle, Lindsay, or any others from MPHI to assist you. Thank you all, and I'll pass it back to Danielle.
Hey everyone. The feedback and things that you've shared is really helpful. I know for us, having really good insight into what might be good to spotlight either for an office hour or for us to create as a TA resource is super helpful, so that we can address some of these pieces around measuring evaluation impacts. Sorry, I'm reading chat. I won't do that. But to just kind of be sure that we are meeting the needs that you all have, and that way that sustainability plan that you create at the end of this project will be something that you can actually utilize. In terms of just covering these next steps on your screen, kind of the homework, if you have some time between now and our next office hour, take a moment to review the three components that we went over today. So evaluation ROI, relevance and practicality, or yeah, and then the communications piece. Feel free to email me or Lindsay with any questions that you have, or TA requests that come out of that. And then we will be getting ready for our last session explicitly focused on sustainability planning to wrap up those last two or last three pieces of the framework. So efficiency and effectiveness, capacity, and funding diversification. I know that those are all elements that people are really interested in, especially the funding. I'm always looking for funding dollars, and I think having ways that we can diversify that funding so that folks do not feel like they're kind of reaching the edge of a cliff when that sole funding source ends is really important. I see in the chat, is it possible to share your impact report with us? If, the Macomb report, I'll just reach out to get a formal yes from their team, and then I will happily share it as
That's a
a
yes, Danielle. This
Oh,
is
okay.
Sue from Macomb. Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely a yes, or we can send out the link to everyone. You know, if you have the link, send it out, or I can send you a new link. Sure.
Yeah,
That's awesome. Thank you.
yeah. So I can share that. I'll happily share the photo voice that Dana has shared with us, just to see different ways that you can share that story. And I think those are kind of the more when it comes to evaluation, I think the more tangible pieces, like the more interesting things that are going to really allow people to understand why collaboration and coalition work like this is really critical, and why funding it is super important. So we do what we can. And then next slide, I think it's just resources, right? Yeah, so these are just the resources that we use to create the slides. And then if you don't have my email address, it's on the next slide. Don't know how you don't have it, but there you go. Feel free to reach out to us, or, if you want to bring it up during your one-on-one check-in, that's also okay too. Otherwise, we will see everyone in August to talk more about those last three components. If you have questions about the work plan request, feel free to stay on. I can answer those questions as well. Otherwise, thanks y'all so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.